Ecofictologists, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lovis and today it is time. It is time for another monthly reading wrap-up. I'm really enjoying this new format of talking about all the books that I read. It feels like I can give you a broader scope and I can get through more titles this way compared to when I did dedicated episodes. So I'm really having a lot of fun with it, but I want to know what you think. I want to give you the content that you want. So leave me a comment down below. Tell me if you like this new format, if you preferred the old one, or if you would like a mix of both. This is still an experiment, so I want your feedback, so talk to me, people, talk to me. This is all part of my search for my favorite ecofiction novel of 2022, so by the end of the year, this tournament board will be full, and you'll have 12 great recommendations for reading ecofiction, and of course, my favorite of them all. So without any further ado, let's get into the 4 books that I read this month. First up is My Days of Dark Green Euphoria by A.E. Copenhaver. This was published by Ashland Creek Press and it debuted early February. And Ashland Creek Press did send me a copy for review. I did start it in February, but I finished it in March, so that's why I'm talking to you about it now. The premise is that our main character, Kara, has extreme eco-grief and eco-anxiety. She's very careful about every scrap of waste. She's vegan, she's cruelty-free, she doesn't drive, she doesn't travel, she dumpster dives for her food. She's very nervous about every little piece of plastic that she uses. Her goal is zero footprint. In fact, ideal scenario would be for her to just become a plant. Of course, none of that is bad. It would be great if we were all a bit more conscious about our choices, but Kara does take it to the next level. Her entire identity and idea of self-worth and the worth of other people is kind of decided by the decisions that they've made in these kinds of life choices. And then she meets someone who shows her what it's like to not give a damn about any of those things, really, and it's kind of a strange sort of freedom and easing of the mind, and you see how it plays with her values and shifts her perspectives, but is it a good thing? We're not sure. I have to say, at first, I did struggle a little bit making progress in this book because the vegan and eco-conscious messaging is very strong, and not really a page goes by where some of these life choices are not questioned. You know, eating meat, wearing leather, traveling, having kids. All of these things are challenged. And if I hadn't been asked to read it, I don't know if I would have made enough progress in the book to realize that it was meant to be satirical. To realize that it is a satire and it's meant to be over the top and it's meant to be cartoonish and it's meant to point out, you know, there's a limit. You don't have to be this kind of aggressive eco-warrior in order to be eco-conscious, and this isn't a very healthy way to be. I did not get that at the very beginning. It took me a minute. It took me a minute to get to that point, and then it became so much funnier. It was so much funnier once you know that it's a satire. So I'm telling you all now, if you decide to pick this up, if you're keen on vegan messaging or eco-conscious decisions and you want to see something about eco-grief and eco-anxiety, definitely pick this up. It's wonderfully written and the author's voice comes through so strongly and she's so funny. It's funny. It's really sometimes is quite shocking, which I love. But know that it's supposed to be over the top. And then it adds another layer of humor onto it rather than feeling like you're being preached to. That's not the point of this book. This is not the author preaching to you about your life choices. Even though it seems that way at the beginning, it's not. So just go into it knowing it's a satire. And I will actually be talking to A.E. Copenhaver on this channel in a couple of weeks' time. She was kind enough to agree to have an interview with me about exactly this topic, about the strength of messaging and how to know how strong to make your messaging for the audience that you've chosen, and whether to choose a specific audience or to write for the general public. We had a great discussion, so stay tuned for that in a couple of weeks. Or next week. Is it next week? Might be next week. Stay tuned. So that was the first book that I read in March, and the next ones are all the results of the TBR MASH game that I played at the beginning of the month. If you missed that video, I'll link it up here and down in the description below. It's my monthly TBR game that helps me decide which books to read, and it gives me a combination of prompts that I need to match, and these were the books that matched my prompts. So check out the video if that sounds like fun to you, and this is what I thought of the books. The first of those books that I read was Scat by Hiaasen. My TBR MASH role for this, I think, was YA, contemporary, set in North America, and inspired by something on the calendar. March 3rd was World Wildlife Day. There is a panther on the cover. There is a panther in the book. It is all about a swampy ecosystem. And so that was my prompt, and I decided that this fit, and having read it, I still think it fits. I found this a delightful read. This was so much fun. It is geared towards the younger end of young adult, I would say like 12, 13, 14 maybe. It's a YA mystery set in Florida in a swamp where two middle school aged protagonists, they lose their biology teacher in the swamp, and the whole book is the mystery of what happened to her. And the kids have their own investigation, and then of course the police investigate, and the headmaster of the school investigates. There's a company illegally drilling oil in the swamp. There's a panther on the loose. There's all kinds of shenanigans in this book. And the adults are all fairly ridiculous. Like, they're all very, almost caricatures of how kids see adults, like the biology teacher is the most terrifying biology teacher they've ever had, and the substitute teacher has completely lost his mind. You know, it was kind of funny to read the version of adults that like entertains kids. And it entertained me, and I don't know what that says about me. I think this book would reach younger readers really well. It puts the two kids right smack in the middle of all the action. I thought it was funny. I would have loved to read it as a kid. There were some very heartwarming moments. One of the kids, Nick, his father, comes back injured from war, and there's just the moments when together, and very heartwarming, very touching. So it's a complex story, it's an emotional story, and it pulls kids into a story about environmental issues. What more could I ask for? So yeah, I very much enjoyed it, would highly recommend. The third book I read in March was The Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenni Fagan. This was to satisfy the prompt of YA contemporary set in Europe, and inspired by something happening on social media. So I chose the prompt of growth from the Read Your Bookshelf challenge. I'll link that down below if you're interested. This is set in Scotland, in Clachan Falls, and it kind of switches perspectives between Dylan McRae, a guy who has lost his mother and his grandmother, and the family cinema down in London, and now travels up north to this caravan park. And the other perspective is a young trans teenage girl. Her name is Stella, and her storyline is all about going through puberty as a trans teenager, and in quite a small-minded and small community, and not feeling accepted by everybody. So very, very powerful perspective and storyline. This turned out not really to be a contemporary. I mean, it's set in 2020, but when it was written, when it was published in 2016, this was speculative fiction. And what's happening in the book is that the world has gone crazy and it's gone cold. And this is the worst winter ever. The UK is completely iced over, snowed in. Everything goes to pot. And they're up in the far north of Scotland, and they live in a caravan. So, and it's pretty much about the world losing its mind as it freezes over due to climate change. And all the characters you know, they're experiencing that, but they're also experiencing the everyday struggles and transformation in all kinds of different ways. So not quite contemporary, but I tried. I saw 2020 and I thought, yep, that'll do. Oh dear. I really, really, really liked the writing style of this book. It is so voicey. The author just has a way with putting words together. Like, I can't even explain it, but I loved it. The dialogue always seems very genuine and real and quirky, but always reveals so much about each character. Each character has their own very distinct voice. There were some really stunning visuals in there, and I don't know, I was just really swept up by the writing in this. I felt like the characters were very real and experiencing real things and having real reactions. The story, I don't really know if I would say it had much of a plot arc. Like, there was no real goal. Like, each character had kind of, you understood the struggles that they were facing, but I didn't really know where the story was gonna go, but I didn't care. I only noticed it when I finished it, that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that that's where we were going. It just felt like I was peeking into real people's lives, and let's be honest, our lives don't always feel like they have a plot arc either, do they? I can't personally speak to the trans representation in this book, but from what I have read, it's been very well received, and the representation reads as real and genuine and authentic. I have linked an interview with Jenni Fagan down in the description below. She answers questions about why she wrote Stella this way, and from the outside it seemed very genuine to me, and from reviews I've read of people who know better than I do, I'm not alone in that opinion. So hopefully, if you are looking for LGBTQ books and trans representation, then this one will not disappoint. The words on the front here say, it's vivid and tender, it's intimately imagined and beautiful and strange, and that is exactly what it is. The ending, I will probably split the crowd. I don't know if I was completely satisfied with it, but it didn't ruin the book for me. I still really, really enjoyed this book. So, Sunlight Pilgrims by Jenni Fagan. The fourth and last book that I read in March was The Boy Who Met a Whale by Nizrana Farook, and my TBR MASH prompt for this was middle grade, contemporary, set in Asia or written by an Asian author, and the publishing house had to be an independent publishing house. I read this in about a day. It's a middle grade. The writing is really quite big. It's a nice, quick, easy read, and I thought it was sweet. I thought it was very sweet. It's about 3 kids who get swept up in a big treasure hunt, and they have to face the dangers from the sea as well as horrible men chasing them. They kind of do their best to hold the forces of evil at bay and right some wrongs along the way. The book doesn't send a particularly strong environmental message, I didn't think, but the ocean and the creatures in the ocean were present at every stage of this book. The sea turtles and the whale and the island and fishing community and reading the weather based on the ocean and all these things. And it really is one of the main characters' kind of knowledge of the sea and how well he understands it is what helps them survive at every turn and things. So I thought the environment was there. It wasn't an environmental book, but the environment was there. It didn't give me the warm fuzzies that I was expecting, but it was very sweet. I read this as part of the middle grade March readathon, so I will link that down in the description below if you are looking for some more middle grade recommendations. So those were the books I read this month. It was a good reading month. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. So now to choose my favorite among the 4 and fill out the board. So I think it is going to be a showdown between Scat and the Sunlight Pilgrims. I think with my Days of Dark Green and Euphoria, it took me a little too long to realize that it was a satire, and so I missed out on the funny in the first third of the book. And The Boy Who Met the Whale was sweet and charming, but didn't give me warm fuzzies that I was expecting, and I didn't feel particularly kind of touched by it. So that one's not in the running for the top spot either. So Sunlight Pilgrims or Scat. Very, very different books. I do have to say the ending was not, just didn't leave me satisfied. I just wanted a little bit more closure, I suppose. I wanted something. I don't know what I wanted, but I wanted something. And Scat was great. It had ridiculous characters. It had heartwarming moments. It might not have been as beautifully or lyrically written as the Sunlight Pilgrims, but it had a fun plot, it had a clear goal, I knew where we were going, and I did very much enjoy the ending. So I think it is gonna have to be my favorite read of March. I really enjoyed reading Scat. I did. Yeah, I think this is the winner. I think this is my favorite read of March. So let's put that up on the board. Scat by Carl Hiaasen is my favorite read of March. Ooh, so now I have to decide whether I liked it better than Siege of Bitterns by Steve Burrows, which was my favorite read of February. If you missed that video, I'll link that up here and in the description below. Siege of Bitterns was so wonderfully nerdy, and that's what I loved about it. But is it better than Scat? Maybe the irritation I felt at the main character for not like sticking up for himself and defending himself. You can hear me rant about that in the video. Maybe that is what is holding it back. And I didn't have kind of any complaints with this book. I mean, there were irritating characters, but like they were cartoonish villains, like adults from the view of kids, and it made them funny. So I do think Scat by Carl Hiaasen wins this particular showdown. And that means that Appleseed by Matt Bell has a new contender. That's very exciting. This is actually getting harder as time passes because it's been a while since I read Appleseed. The memory is fading. Check out my reading wrap-up for January to know more about that. And Appleseed does have 3 storylines, and one of them really, really resonated with me, and the other 2 didn't so much. And is it enough to keep it in the running? I mean, my favorite book of 2022 is just that. It's my favorite. I'm not trying to make a statement about a book's quality. I'm just trying to make a statement about which I enjoyed more. And I think I enjoyed Scat more than Appleseed. Like, I struggled through Appleseed until things got going, I gotta say. And I didn't struggle with this. I flew through this. So we have a new frontrunner. Scat by Carl Hiaasen is my favorite book of Q1 of 2022. I can't believe that's the first quarter over. That's ridiculous. So there we have it. That's my reading wrap up for the month of March. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these books, if you share my opinions or disagree with me, also totally fine. Just let me know what you thought about it, and let me know if you like this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I post every Wednesday all about reading and writing ecofiction and how it can be used as a science communication tool, with some bonus content on some Mondays when I manage to make content. If you like what I do and would like to support me, then head on over to patreon.com/Ecofictology and become a patron, where your monthly donation buys me books and also supports Love the Oceans, a marine conservation organization operating out of Mozambique. And if you're looking for a little bit of community around your ecofiction reading, join us on our Discord server, Rewilding Our Stories. We've got people looking at ecofiction from all kinds of different angles, and we've got some really, really great discussions going on over there. So we'd be happy to have you. Invite link is in the description below. And that is all from me. So happy reading, and I'll see you next week, Ecofictologists. I can't personally speak for the Oh, wow.